Of all the bitter rivalries in college football, few are born from an act of personal betrayal. But in the heart of Texas, the oldest feud in the Dallas Fort Worth Metroplex was recently supercharged by a move many saw as an ultimate act of treason. In late 2021, a coach named Sonny Dykes, the very man who had resurrected the Southern Methodist University football program from decades of irrelevance, did the unthinkable. He didn't just leave for a better job, he left to become the head coach of their most hated enemy, Texas Christian University. He became the first modern era coach to leave a major program directly for its primary in state rival. The announcement was made in the most dramatic way possible, with Dykes landing in a helicopter at TCU's stadium. To the SMU faithful, who had reportedly offered to nearly double his salary to keep him, it was a profound betrayal. One booster perfectly captured the sentiment. It's like I got broken up with. We feel stabbed in the back. But to understand why a 40-mile move down the highway could inspire such venom, you have to understand that this rivalry isn't just about football. It's a century-long proxy war for the soul of a sprawling metropolis. The battle between two cities, two cultures, and two identities, all fighting for bragging rights over a simple cast iron frying pan. This is the story of the battle for the Iron Skillet. The conflict is rooted in the fundamental tension between Dallas and Fort Worth. Separated by just a handful of miles, the two cities couldn't be more different. Dallas, home to SMU, is the cosmopolitan hub of commerce and modernism, a place described as where the East peters out. It's a city of gleaming skylines, finance, and new money, a culture often perceived as polished, ambitious, and corporate. SMU, nestled in the affluent enclave of University Park, embodies this persona. Just to the west lies Fort Worth, TCU's home, a city that proudly carries its cowtown heritage, proudly known as the place where the West begins. Rooted in the history of the cattle industry and the Chisholm Trail, Fort Worth projects a more casual, traditional, and laid-back Texas vibe. It's often described as being more down-to-earth than its eastern neighbor, fostering a tight-knit community spirit that feels more traditionally Texan. The annual game, therefore, becomes a clash of identities: Dallas corporate polish versus Fort Worth's Western grit. The annual game, therefore, becomes a clash of identities: Dallas's corporate polish versus Fort Worth's Western grit. The TV show years ago with Who Shot JR? It was named Dallas for a reason. If it was named Fort Worth, nobody would have watched it. The fight began on October 8, 1915. In its very first season of football, a brand new SMU program, then known as the Parsons, traveled to Fort Worth and was demolished by a more established TCU team, 43-0. It was a humbling start, and SMU wouldn't record its first victory in the series until 1923. But that win was a sign of things to come, as it propelled them to their first Southwest Conference championship and a perfect 9-0 season. For the next 2 decades, the rivalry simmered as both schools became charter members of the legendary Southwest Conference, a league that would eventually produce 64 national championships across 17 sports. It was here in the 1930s that the conference pioneered pass-heavy offenses that revolutionized the sport, and the SMU-TCU rivalry exploded onto the national stage. On November 30th, 1935, the stakes were absolute. Both SMU and TCU entered the game with a perfect 10-0 record. The winner would claim the Southwest Conference Championship, a probable national title, and the honor of being the first SWC team to ever play in the Rose Bowl. The influential sports writer Grantland Rice of the New York Sun dubbed it the game of the century. The hype was immense. Over 36,000 fans crammed into TCU's Amon G. Carter Stadium, whose official seating capacity was closer to 23,000 at the time. It was one of the first Texas football games broadcast nationwide on radio, bringing the drama coast to coast. The contest lived up to its billing. SMU jumped out to a 14-0 halftime lead, but TCU's legendary quarterback, Sammy Baugh, led a furious comeback in the second half, tying the score at 14-14 in the fourth quarter with an 8-yard touchdown pass. With just 7 minutes to play, SMU faced a critical 4th and 4 at the TCU 37-yard line. They lined up to punt, but in a stunning trick play, quarterback Bob Finley took the snap and launched a 50-yard pass to running back Bobby Wilson for the game-winning touchdown. SMU held on to win 20-14. The play became known as the $85,000 pass, the payout SMU received for the Rose Bowl berth, which helped the university pay off its stadium debt. In the aftermath, SMU went to the Rose Bowl where they lost, while TCU accepted a bid to the Sugar Bowl, which they won. Despite the head-to-head loss, some polls still named TCU the 1935 national champion, while SMU also claimed a title, ensuring the debate over who was truly better would last for generations. The Golden Age was defined by these larger-than-life figures. TCU had Slingin' Sammy Baugh, a two-time All-American who revolutionized the quarterback position. Grantland Rice wrote of him, "Mr. Slingin' Samuel Baugh can chunk that cabbage. He could murder a fly on a fence with the snout of that missile from any distance, from a yard to 50. SMU had Doak Walker, a three-time All-American and the only Mustang to ever win the Heisman Trophy in 1948. Walker was so popular that SMU moved its game to the enlarged Cotton Bowl Stadium, which soon became known as the house that Doak built. It was during this era that the rivalry got its name and its prize, the Iron Skillet. The tradition began in 1946, but true to the rivalry's nature, its origin is a point of bitter contention. The SMU version is pure folklore. It claims an SMU fan was frying frog legs in a skillet at a tailgate to taunt the TCU Horned Frogs. An incensed TCU fan declared this an act of disrespect and proposed that the winner of the game should claim both the skillet and the cooked frog legs. The more historically documented TCU version tells a different story. In the years after World War II, vandalism between the campuses had become a serious problem. In 1945 alone, the schools had sustained over $1,000 in damages, the equivalent of more than $17,500 today. To channel that energy more productively, the student councils of both universities agreed to create a traveling trophy. They settled on an iron skillet, and after SMU won the 1946 game, the trophy was officially presented at a joint banquet in Dallas. The dueling stories perfectly encapsulate the rivalry. The brash, informal tale of fried frog legs mirrors the perception of Dallas, while the orderly, pragmatic account reflects Fort Worth's community-focused image. That animosity often spilled into legendary pranks. The most famous occurred in 1999 when the SMU Mustang Band dropped winter rye grass seeds during their halftime performance at TCU's stadium. That winter, after TCU's Bermuda grass went dormant, the ryegrass sprouted, creating a perfect green Diamond M logo in the middle of TCU's field. For decades, the rivalry was one of the nation's best, a balanced, ferocious back-and-forth affair. But on February 25, 1987, the competitive fire was extinguished in an instant. On that day, the NCAA handed down the death penalty to the SMU football program. An investigation had revealed a systemic and brazen scheme of illegal payments to players bankrolled by a slush fund that had been operating since the mid-1970s. It was revealed that 13 players were still being paid a total of $61,000 over 2 seasons, with monthly payments ranging from $50 to $725. The corruption ran so deep that Texas Governor Bill Clements, who chaired SMU's board, had authorized continued payments, claiming a moral obligation to players. Because the program was already on probation and had been specifically warned about the repeat violator rule, the NCAA deployed its harshest possible punishment. The announcement was so shocking that the NCAA's Director of Enforcement, David Burst, actually fainted moments after delivering it. The NCAA canceled SMU's entire 1987 season, and with the program in ruins, the university voluntarily chose not to field the team in 1988 either. The impact on the rivalry was catastrophic. Before the shutdown, SMU was in the middle of its most dominant era, having won 15 consecutive games against TCU from 1972 to 1986, the longest streak by either team in this series' history. The all-time series was neck and neck. When the game resumed in 1989, the dynamic had been forever altered. A resurrected SMU program, stripped of scholarship and talent, was no match for its rival. SMU won just one game in their return season and didn't record a conference win until 1992. TCU won that 1989 game and went on to win 20 of the next 28 meetings, seizing control of the series and transforming the rivalry into a lopsided affair. The competitive balance would return for nearly 30 years. As SMU struggled for decades to recover, TCU embarked on a remarkable journey to national prominence. Under the 21-year tenure of head coach Gary Patterson, the Horned Frogs became a defensive juggernaut, a perennial top 25 team that masterfully navigated conference realignment to land a coveted spot in the Big 12. Patterson's teams led the nation in total defense 5 times and achieved 6 top 10 finishes between 2008 and 2017. The rise culminated in an undefeated 2010 season, capped by a victory in the 2011 Rose Bowl. That success was so profound that TCU saw a 42% increase in admissions applications after that season. For years, TCU played the role of big brother, punctuated by embarrassing blowouts like a 56-0 shutout in 2014, their largest margin of victory in series history. But after decades in the wilderness, SMU finally began to find its footing. First under June Jones, who led them to their first bowl game in 25 years, and then under a new coach, Sonny Dykes. The 2019 matchup was a turning point. Using an aggressive transfer portal strategy to target Dallas area players, Dykes led SMU into Fort Worth, where they stunned TCU 41-38, snapping a 7-game losing streak. That season, SMU finished with 10 wins, their best record since 1984. They proved it was no fluke by winning again in 2021, marking the first time the Mustangs had beaten their rivals in back-to-back games since 1992-93. SMU was finally back. The rivalry was competitive again. And that's when the ultimate betrayal happened. Following that 2021 season, Sonny Dykes, the architect of SMU's revival, left to become the head coach at TCU. The exit was messy, with reports that Dykes was already assembling his TCU staff while SMU's season was collapsing in its final weeks. This sense of betrayal was so intense that Dykes immediately moved his family to Fort Worth to avoid the Dallas backlash. Perhaps to drive the knife a little deeper, from The Athletic, February 2nd, 2018, in an article by Chris Vanini, Sonny Dykes is asked about what was your reaction when the SMU job opened. And Dykes replies, I grew up an SMU fan. My dad was a coach in Texas and bounced around, but my favorite team was SMU. I've always felt like this is a cool place. I've always wanted to live in Dallas. I've always thought this would be a perfect place to raise my kid and live. The sting of that betrayal was magnified exponentially by what happened next. In his very first season at TCU in 2022, Dykes led the Horned Frogs on a miraculous 12-0 undefeated run through the regular season. He guided them to their first college football playoff appearance, where they defeated Michigan in a thrilling semifinal, becoming the first Big 12 team to ever win a college football playoff game. A coach leaving for his arch rival and immediately achieving the pinnacle of success, winning 10 National Coach of the Year awards in the process, injected a potent modern venom into this historic feud. The bitterness was on full display in 2024. SMU got its revenge in a wild 66-42 victory amongst the highest scoring games in the rivalry's history, in a game that saw Sonny Dykes ejected for the first time in his career while playing against his former team. For over a century, the battle for the Iron Skillet has been a story of constantly shifting fortunes. It's seen a golden age of national relevance, a catastrophic rupture that is unique in all of college sports, a 3-decade era of TCU superiority, and now, just as the rivalry reached its most competitive and emotionally charged state in decades, it faces extinction. And perhaps the cruelest irony of all, both programs have finally achieved what they fought for since the Southwest Conference collapsed: membership in power conferences. SMU joined the Atlantic Coast Conference, the ACC, in 2024, while TCU competes in the Big 12. But this long-sought success comes with a devastating cost. After 2025, the Iron Skillet may be cold forever. Conference realignment, the same force that promised to elevate both programs, has instead delivered the ultimate betrayal to fans who sustained this rivalry through scandal, blowouts, and decades of irrelevance. The fight between Dallas and Fort Worth, between cosmopolitan polish and Western grit, deserved better than to be sacrificed on the altar of television contracts and conference expansion. The Iron Skillet rivalry now faces death by bureaucracy. For the fans who passed this tradition through generations, who've endured the pranks, the heartbreak, and the glory, this isn't progress. It's the ultimate betrayal of a century-long Texan drama, abandoning the true battle for the soul of North Texas, just when it mattered most. If you enjoyed this video, you might like our playlist featuring offenses throughout football history. The playlist contains video on the single wing, the T formation, the wishbone, and the first triple option offense, the veer.